Sanders from the block at the right tackle. This is Horton and intercepted. It's picked up by Chris Harris, the top-rated quarterback in pro football.
Bauer tipped in the air and intercepted. Picked off by Chris Harris.
And Chris Harris gets him again.
Now it's intercepted by Chris Harris, who's all the way home. What a comeback for the Broncos!
Welcome to another episode of Bleav in the Broncos on the Bleav Network, sponsored by BetOnline. I am Patrick Chiotti. I'm one of your two hosts of this program. Joining me, as always, is former Denver Bronco, Super Bowl 50 champion, Chris Harris Jr. Chris, how you doing, man? It's good to see you.
Doing good, man. Let's talk some ball. Let's
Yes,
get it
sir.
going.
Well, you mentioned before the show, NBA legend Jerry West has passed away. Sad news this morning. Yeah. And Chris, as a Lakers fan, I know that you root for the Lakers. This one hits home. Jerry West, an iconic figure, quite literally the logo for the NBA. Yeah. Share some thoughts on Jerry West for the listeners.
Yeah. I mean, he's just, you got to put him up there in the GOAT conversation when you talk about totality of career, of being, he's like the gold standard of going from player to coach to GM, you know, and then running like the back, he's running the organization, you know what I mean? So when you see him trade for Kobe and things like that, be able to put Kobe and Shaq together. Also he put a lot of those Clipper teams, you know, he's really helped put the Clippers on the map too also. So RIP Jerry West, you know, he's one of the GOATs, and, you know, you got to salute a guy like that who had a hell of a career, man.
Yes, sir. Well, we will be thinking about the West family and Jerry's impact across the NBA. But Chris, the Denver Broncos mandatory minicamp has been underway this week. Bo Nix is showing out. Jarrett Stidham is apparently playing very well. Courtland Sutton is in the building. It's a great time to be a Broncos fan and enthusiast. We are going to continue with our roster breakdown series. Last episode, we covered the cornerback room. This episode, we're going to be going back over to the offensive side. We're going to be talking about the wide receivers. This is a group, Chris. This is a stacked group. We think about it just looking from the outside, and we say, oh, yeah, they've got Courtland Sutton and Tim Patrick's back. They bring in a guy like Josh Reynolds, who's a veteran. But how many players are actually going to be able to stick in this group? Sean Payton historically has kept around 5 or 6. Probably won't be more than that. So we are going to be giving our full breakdown of that group. Who are the new guys? Who are the players who are returning? Who is a lock to make this roster? Who's going to be fighting for that extra spot in the room? We're going to be breaking that all down during this episode of Bleav in the Broncos. But first, we have a message from our sponsors. BetOnline is your number one source for the NBA Finals and Stanley Cup Finals this season. Every stat, every matchup, and even live odds and spreads while the games are being played. When the game's over, head on over to our online casino and get in on a game of blackjack or poker, or unwind with one of our over 150 slots games. Head to the website today to get in on the action. Use promo code Bleav, that's BLEAV, for your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Bet online. The game starts here. And Chris, where we're going to start is with this wide receiver room. This is a group that's going to need to perform at a really high level this year, Chris. Based off of the performance last year, there's different guys in the room. Jerry Jeudy's gone. He's in Cleveland. They brought in a couple new faces, some younger players who could potentially be impact guys. What are your thoughts on last year's receiver group and how they performed just in the wider spectrum of the offense in what it was last year?
I would give them I'd probably give them a B just because of Courtland. You know, he made so many big time plays. Yep. But, you know, Jeudy, we still had a lot of plays, missed plays out there, like game-changing plays, you know, that could have really shifted the season. That's why I would give him a B. Then also not having Tim Patrick, but we did see some good things, right? The good things that we seen was our young rookie receiver, Marvin Mims, damn near the league in yards per catch, right? Big plays after big plays, but we couldn't get this guy the ball, right? We couldn't find the ways. We always heard the excuses of we couldn't be able to implement this guy in. We only had so many passes to go around to, right? So many plays to go around. That was the excuse. So this year we expect Mims to definitely take it up to the next level. Courtland's coming back off a huge year. He's probably hungry. He wants more money. So he's probably looking to prove himself even more. So, and we got a healthy Tim Patrick back. And he's been productive. As long as Tim's been out there, he's been very productive, right, when he's on the field. So I think this group should be a lot better and should be able to really make more plays down the field consistently.
Yeah, Tim Patrick I remember last year when we were talking about this, Chris, and Tim Patrick was showing out in camp. All the reports that were coming out were saying that Sean Payton really, really loved what Tim Patrick was able to bring to the Broncos offense, and his injury was devastating. I mean, that's a killer, especially for a guy like Tim, who is just so beloved, like a high character guy, really high effort guy, and to lose him in such a pivotal moment. You're going into this season with a new head coach and a new offense, and you need a guy like Tim Patrick because he's so good at the sticks. Now you have him back. He's healthy. All the reports from camp are that he is looking amazing. And Sean Payton had a little bit to say in his press conference the other day where he mentioned all those things. Great team player, beloved in the locker room, high effort guy. So I think Tim's presence was missed last season on the offense. Courtland certainly showed out. And you mentioned Marvin Mims. Chris, how do you feel about some of these other guys who were producing last year in this offense? Guys like Brandon Johnson and Lil Jordan Humphrey. And what do you see last year that you hope those guys can bring, hopefully, to this offense this season?
Yeah. I mean, for spot duty, those guys found the end zone, right? I think Brandon Johnson found it 4 times, right? Yeah. That's a lot for a guy, that doesn't expect to play a lot. So we know this guy's capable of finding the end zone. With having those 4 touchdowns, it's going to be hard to cut this guy because you never know. A team might see that he was productive with limited play, and they might scoop him up. So it's going to be definitely a tight battle between him and Lil Jordan Humphrey because Humphrey's got in the end zone also, right? And I think they're kind of similar players. It's going to be who's going to be better on special teams. That's going to be the edge out of these guys. Who can make more plays? The thing that helps them is that one of your best receivers is the returner, right? If they're gonna, but we don't know, are they gonna keep him at punt return, kick return a lot because he's gonna be getting the ball a lot more. So it's gonna be interesting to see what they do with Mims as a returner. But I would definitely keep him at a returner. Like we got to keep Mims there. He's such a dynamic player. We need that, but that will help Humphrey and Johnson on getting that last spot because you have a guy that is going to play special teams. So it's going to be an interesting battle, and both those guys had production and limited play. And was it Brandon Johnson with all the yak? I think that's
I have his stats right here. He had 90 yards after the catch. And then Lil Jordan had 98, so it's pretty comparable.
But
but like 90 yards after the catch on 19 catches, 284 yards total for Brandon Johnson. I mean, that's still pretty good production. And then Lil Jordan, 162 yards, and 98 of those came after the catch. Give Lil Jordan the ball.
Yeah, they're both. That's what I'm saying. They're both similar, right? It's crazy, and I think these guys definitely deserve a spot in the league. It's just right now when you bring in Tim and then we brought in Josh Reynolds, that's another veteran and he's pretty much on a guaranteed contract. So you expect him to be on the field, and all these guys are similar. Like I think Reynolds was more like an insurance guy, and I don't think they knew what was going to happen with Tim. Right, would Tim accept this pay cut that he did because he took a major pay cut, to really stay on the team. So I think they got Josh as kind of like an insurance policy, and but right now he's guaranteed. So he's going to be on the roster.
Sean Payton is not a guy who likes to show his cards too much. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like he keeps everything very close to the chest, but he's not being slick about the type of wide receiver that he wants in his offense. He's not being slick at all. Look at Josh Reynolds, Lil Jordan Humphrey, Tim Patrick, Courtland Sutton. I mean, you could even probably consider Brandon Johnson. He's a bigger built guy.
Yeah.
All those guys are pretty similar in size and stature and body type. Yeah. Like they're very physical blockers. Like some call them like the big slender receivers, but these guys are tough. They block. They are not afraid to get their hands dirty and block downfield, especially a guy like Josh Reynolds. And I think that's we're getting a little ahead of ourselves, but I'm thinking of like guys who we brought in to help this offense grow. And you get a guy like Josh Reynolds, who's been around the league, who's played in a couple different offenses, but specifically his experience in Detroit with Dan Campbell being the disciple of Sean Payton. They have a very similar mindset when it comes to blocking, especially from the wide receiver position. So you have to be a solid blocker. You have to know where the sticks are at all times. Josh Reynolds, one of the best receivers in first down transitions. I think that this speaks volumes to what Sean Payton's plan is going to be. Chris, let's take a look at the returning wide receivers for the Denver Broncos. Courtland Sutton, obviously at the top of that list. You mentioned Marvin Mims Jr., Tim Patrick coming back on that smaller deal, Lil Jordan, Brandon Johnson, and then these other guys, Jalen Virgil, who had a ton of promise, but he suffered that season-ending injury last year, so we didn't get to see a lot of him. Philip Dorsett, another veteran guy who's been around the league. David Sills, mostly special teams guy, and then Michael Bandy, who came over from Los Angeles last season. Another guy who was he was showing out in camp, and they decided to keep him around. This is a lot of guys.
I played with Bandy and with the Chargers.
Yeah,
I think I got there his first year.
Was Philip on the Chargers too? Dorsett? I can't remember.
I played Philip Dorsett when he was with the Colts, and I think Houston Texans. I think he was with Houston.
Yeah, that's what it was. And he was on the Patriots as well. So, Chris, these returning guys, I mean, again, we are operating under the assumption that Sean Payton is only going to keep 6 wide receivers in this room. And just right off the bat, I mean, that first 5, you could even make an argument for that first 5 to just come back and be, 5 of that 6. But let's talk about these bottom 4 guys, because, these are the guys that are going to be fighting in camp for a roster spot or even for a practice squad spot. Which of these 4 do you think has the biggest upside to maybe make an impact in the offense?
I would say a guy like Philip Dorsett, just because he's a veteran. He's probably the fastest guy out of that group. Probably second behind Mims. So he's the guy that has the juice. I would say that Virgil, we haven't really got too much footage on him and Sal's. Michael Bandy is going to be more like your option route runner, your slot guy. He's there if you don't have a slot, right? And right now, I think they expect Mims to play the slot. Probably Franklin play the slot too, because he's another guy I think has he has some go. So it's going to be hard for Bandy to make it. So I would say if I see somebody sneaking in there, probably a Dorsett. Maybe he could be a backup returner. / if they don't want to put Mims at returner, you can always put Dorsett back there. So I think he might be an insurance guy, special teams guy, might be able to crack his way through that window.
I completely agree. I think, Jalen Virgil we saw a little bit of speed from him in training camp in the preseason last season, before the injury. And I mean, this was a guy who he could fly, man. Like this was another guy that if they wanted to get a good look at another possible returner Jalen Virgil would not be a terrible option. It's just, can he stay healthy? Can he withstand training camp? That's such a big part of this, Chris, is a lot of these guys have dealt with injuries, and you know this more than anyone. Training camp is training camp. It's tough.
Yeah.
And part of what separates those guys from, the star players and the consistent starters from guys who are fringe roster bubble guys, is, can they survive the offseason? Can they survive training camp? So I would love to see Jalen Virgil get that chance this preseason. But I'm going to have to rock with you on this one. I think Philip Dorsett probably has the most upside, just being the veteran presence in the room. Chris, let's take a look at the new guys in the room. Only 3 new wide receivers in this room, but 3 guys that could very well make some noise. We mentioned Josh Reynolds. Him coming over from Detroit is massive. Like we said, another big body, another blocker. I can't remember if you've ever gotten the chance to play against Josh Reynolds, but maybe you can give a little more insight into the type of player that Josh Reynolds could be for the Broncos offense.
Yeah, he's a tall, kind of slender guy, but you don't want to get him started. When I'm putting against Josh, you got to try to slow him down on the line, right? That's one thing that he has to improve on is, getting off the line. But he has great sheer hands, right? He can take you up top. He's not the fastest, but, he's kind of like one of those guys that you have to respect his speed, right? You have to, you still have to have great technique. You have to respect his speed because he can run by you and he can catch the deep ball. So I think he's a great guy in the zones, right? He's solid in running those over routes, the play action routes that Sean Payton has in his offense that he loves to throw. He's similar to, like a Marcus Colston. I think that's what he's looking for. Yeah. Right. All these guys, he's looking for a Marquise Colston. Right. Slender guy, kind of tall, can run the seams. He's not looking for him to make a lot of breaks in his routes, a lot of straight routes, over routes, things like that. So I think he's going to fit well in the offense, great security guy. And I think we got him for $4 million total or $2. I know he sounded like a $2 million signing bonus.
It was cheap.
So, yeah, so he's, we got him for a good deal for a guy that was pretty much a starter last year. So on a winning team. So we got great insurance.
On a playoff team.
Yeah, so we got great insurance right there, and I love that pickup.
Yeah, I'm checking on some numbers right now. So Josh Reynolds, being one of the, you mentioned his sure hands, and I remember the playoff game this year for Detroit.
He's had drops issues before.
He's had some drops, but he's been really consistent over the last couple of years. But his contested catch rate, Chris, I mean, that's the one thing that they really need. Like, we think about these possession receivers in the Sean Payton offense. It's a lot of underneath, a lot of crossing, a lot of option routes, stick. Like, we need big body guys who can box out corners. And this also speaks to the ongoing trend that's going on across the league. Like, defenses are getting smaller and quicker to keep up with the smaller and quicker wide receivers that are coming into the game. But Sean Payton is kind of pulling the reverse card and going, no, we're gonna get bigger. We're gonna get stronger. We're gonna get faster. And Josh Reynolds had a contested catch rate. I think his career contested catch rate is like 49%, which is really, really good. But his contested catch rate last year was 57.1. So 57.1% of his catches. And that, Chris, if he did qualify for the targets, that would have been top in the league. That would have been the best in the league. I think he missed it by like two targets or something. But that would have been top. This is a guy who knows how to fight for the football. And I think that's going to be a big part, especially with a young quarterback like Bo Nix, or, I mean, even a guy like Jarrett Stidham who needs solid wide receivers in this offense. I think Josh Reynolds is going to be an amazing addition for this team. Also, 39 first downs last year, career high for him. 39 first down conversions. That's the other thing to look at. 117.6 rating when thrown to. This is a sure-handed receiver. He's going to be a big impact guy for this Broncos offense. But Chris, the other young guys, you mentioned Troy Franklin. I heard you say it. Put Troy Franklin in the slot. What do you love about Troy Franklin, man? We've talked about him on the show before, but what do you love about Troy Franklin now that you've had a little more time to watch him and get a better clue of his game?
I think it's just unfortunate that, he had to be a senior, or come out in this draft. It's very unfortunate because I think he's a steal. I think he would go way higher in other drafts, but this draft it was a receiver draft, right? So it was just loaded. I think this guy, when you look at his production in college, it doesn't get any better than that, right? Being able to take the top off. He knows how to get in and out of breaks, right? Now I want to see his game, how he's going to do with press coverage, how he's going to do with the more of these physical corners, because that's one thing that you always question with a rookie, right? How is he going to adjust to the physicalness of the game, right? Because us DBs, we are stronger, right? Way stronger compared to college, and so it's just different. You're going against man now, So that's the only thing I want to see is how he's going to transfer that way. But route running, him catching the ball, I think he's going to excel fast. Him and Mims down the road that's going to be a dangerous 1-2 punch, I think. And even with Courtland, because it's good to have a variety of different type of receivers, right? It's you got Mims that's kind of like your take the top off, your burner, right? You got Courtland, he's kind of your physical guy, your Megatron type guy, you know what I mean? Yeah. And Troy he's gonna be a guy that can do them all. That's why I would put him in a category is that he can play outside and inside and be productive.
Yeah, we've spoken about the relationship with him and new quarterback Bo Nix. Obviously, their relationship at Oregon is a great one. But man, this guy, and we've talked about this. I was not super happy when they traded up for him. I thought they could have went in a different direction, but I'm not going to be mad at it. I think that this is a great ad for the Broncos. I think this is just another guy that can take the top off the defense, and you need more of that. We talked about them adding guys that are bigger in size and more physical. Well, Troy Franklin is just that speed element. This is a guy who is very successful downfield, and despite him, being only about 190, 6'3", 190, this guy was very, very good in the red zone. Those contested catches, he was a red zone killer. Back shoulder fade for Troy Franklin, automatic. So I'm pretty excited to see what kind of element he can bring to the offense this year, especially as a rookie. We saw last year how Peyton used Marvin Mims, and he said that Jerry Jeudy and Marvin played the same position. And my worry was when they traded up for him and drafted him is what position is Troy going to play? He's not big enough to be an X. He's not physical enough to be an X. Is he going to steal snaps away from Marvin Mims? So Sean answered that question for us, Chris, and he said they see him as an inside Z, which is, I think, the perfect role for him.
Exactly what I said. He's going to play outside. He's going to be they're going to treat him for the Broncos were like Emmanuel Sanders. Right? Could play both sides, take the top off. Yes. He's very slightly built guy. Emmanuel's, he was skinny. He was super skinny, but bro, you couldn't put a hand on him, right? If you're good at being evasive and being able to run routes, your size, you can overcome your size, right? So, like Coach Sean Payton said, that's exactly what we see him at, playing outside and playing some slot.
Now, Chris, this other guy that the Broncos brought in, 7th-round draft pick out of Utah, Devon Vele, has been lighting it up throughout OTAs, throughout minicamp. He's an older prospect. He did a couple of years on a mission and came back to Utah and finished out his college football career. This is a guy who another deep ball threat. He's not going to wow you with the speed, but he's got good size. He's a sure-handed guy, can catch the ball down the field. What do you see out of Devon Vele, and what do you need to see from him throughout training camp for him to earn a spot on this offense?
Yeah, like you said, another big body receiver. He's not a burner. I think he ran like a 4.6, so he's not that speed type guy, but neither is Tim Patrick, and he runs past people too. So sometimes you can't judge it, by 40s and things like that. So, and this guy was running by guys all through college, and his game reminds me of Josh Reynolds, like a young Josh Reynolds, right? Yeah. And they're very similar. So, I think with this guy, he might be a practice squad candidate just because they're so loaded at the receiver position with young guys, and maybe he can be on practice squad, learn a lot from Courtland, Tim, those guys, and be able to come in next year. Say if Tim moves on, he can kind of come in and be able to fill that role, that Tim plays.
Yeah, Vele, 3 touchdowns last year, just about 600 yards for the Utes. But Chris, I'm looking at these numbers, and I noticed something interesting. The ADOT, the average depth of target. The average depth of target for Troy Franklin last season was 12.35. The average depth of target for Devon Vele, 11.8. These guys are deep threats, and that's exactly what they need. They need guys who can win downfield, and I think that Vele, Franklin, both of those guys offer a very similar skill set. Troy Franklin is just a way more explosive player. But I think Vele's effort in the blocking game, I think it just goes back to what we've been talking about. This is a guy who's a high effort blocker, much like Tim Patrick, 6'5", 210 pounds. This guy's a unit out there. So can he pick up the offense? I think spending some time on the practice squad would be great for him. Pick up the offense. He is older. So how much time are you actually going to spend? Can you get him in his prime next year? Like this is going to be the question as we go throughout training camp and throughout the season is what is their plan for this guy? They spent a 7th-round pick on him, so they must have really, really liked him enough to bring him in.
Yeah.
So,
and he could be a project guy. He could be a guy that they might say, "Hey, this guy is a big body guy. Maybe we can add about 10 to 15 more pounds on him, move him to a tight end position." So you never know. Chris. He could be a project guy with the size and potential that he has. You never know what they might be thinking with him.
Chris, get out of my brain, Chris.
Yeah.
Get out of my head, Chris. No, I mean, and we're going to have this conversation when we do the tight end group here in a few weeks. But this is something that I've pitched on Twitter like numerous times is this like if Greg Dulcich cannot play and
I'm not counting on him to play.
I'm not. Exactly.
I'm not counting on him.
I can't count on it. Like, show me that you can be available. Right now, it's just and Troutman has to have like core surgeries. Sean Payton said he's got to have a minor core surgery. So really, now it's Lucas Kroll, Nate Adkins, and question mark. Like, when do we talk about Lil Jordan Humphrey or Devon Vele spending some time on the practice squad and beefing up and then becoming a hybrid tight end? Like, he doesn't have to be big. Sean Payton used Lil Jordan Humphrey as a tight end when he was in New Orleans. Like, use Vele the same way. Just have him come across, chip, block, and release. Get him the ball and let him go to work. Like, these are things
I think last year was probably – I've never seen Jimmy Graham blocking this. Well, they had another tight end with Jimmy Graham.
You had to.
Yeah, he always has a blocking tight end with him. So Troutman is useful, right? Because we'll talk about it later when we get to the tight ends.
Yeah.
But Vele, he has the potential to be able to, put some weight on, And tight end might be a better position for him, right? Yeah. You might fit in better there. We've seen guys come in and be able to put on weight and move in, and maybe you might turn into a Waller. You never know.
Oh, that's a comparison.
Never know.
Chris, let's finish up with our final projections for this group. So again, operating under the assumption that Sean Payton keeps 6 receivers in this room.
Yeah.
Who are your 6 receivers for the Broncos?
Courtland Sutton.
Mm-hmm.
Tim Patrick. Marvin Mims, that's 3.
Yep.
Reynolds, he's guaranteed on there. They already gave him $2 million.
Have to.
I don't think they're wasted. They're in the business of wasting money this year.
No.
Right?
Nope.
So we got our 4. Franklin, because he's drafted, right? They drafted him 4th round, so that's 5. Now we got a 3. Well, let's say we got a 3-way real battle. Well, 4-way battle, right? With Humphrey, Dorsett, Brandon Johnson, and Valley. I'm gonna go with Humphrey.
Yeah, I like that.
I think Humphrey has a lot of potential. And he finds the end zone. I'm gonna go with Humphrey.
Yeah,
it's gonna be tough though.
That's the toughest. I think the last spot is the toughest. Like if we're talking about only keeping 6, that is the toughest one. Because I'm like right there with you. I think you have Courtland as your X, Mims as your Z, and then you've got Tim as your F, and then you have Reynolds, Franklin, and man, like that. See, like it's tough. My gut tells me that Lil Jordan is going to get that last spot, but I could also see them. I don't know if they can put him on the practice squad anymore. I can't remember the practice squad rules now since they changed.
Anybody can go on practice squad.
Perfect. Yeah. So I could honestly see.
Yeah, anybody can go.
I can honestly see Brandon Johnson making it over Lil Jordan, and then Lil Jordan kind of being that guy practice that swings squad. From practice squad. So I'll go with that. I'll go just to be different. I'll go with Brandon Johnson as last. I think he's earned it. He's a really.
I love them both. It's hard. Yeah, I mean, they're both. I mean, either way, either one, man, they deserve to have a spot in this league. And depending on what we go with these tight ends, man, you never know. We might go with 7 receivers and put Tim at tight end. You never know, man. So it's just that's just such a question mark position, right? That you don't know what's gonna happen.
Yeah, it's gonna be an interesting battle to watch. Will Courtland even be on the team come week 1? I think so.
Yeah,
he will be. That is gonna do it for our roster breakdown of the wide receiver room. Come back next time. Join us for another roster breakdown episode. Chris and I will be here. Send us your questions on Twitter. You can follow us both at Chris Harris Jr., at Patrick Chiotti. Follow at Bleav Network as well. Make sure that you subscribe to this show on whatever podcast platform you're listening to us on, and make sure that you subscribe to the YouTube channel as well. Turn on notifications so you never miss an episode. Broncos country, until next time, we'll see you.